Hey everyone, and welcome to the GRC Room for Inside the Mind of a CISO. I'm Mike Andrews here once again with Karina of Clever Compliance, and we're happy to welcome Anecdotes CISO Jake Bernardes, who's one of our absolute favorite CISOs. So there's a lot to talk about here, but before we get moving, just a couple of notes. Please feel free to leave comments and we'll get to them as soon as possible. If it's not while we're live, it'll be shortly after. Also, if you haven't already, please check out the GRC Room YouTube channel and consider subscribing. On there, you'll be able to find this webinar, all our other ones, clips, and more. So that would really help us out since it's a lot harder to grow on there than it is on old LinkedIn. So without further ado, let me pass it to Karina for a brief introduction, then we'll learn more about Jake.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Karina Clever, founder of Clever Compliance. We do compliance management as a service, and we have recently coined a tool, LARD. Very excited to be here. Ridiculous registration today. So wonderful. Thank you all for coming out. It's our highest yet with over 1,600 registered.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. For a while, I thought Karina was giving out those iTunes gift cards or something like that. But apparently not. So, all right, well, let's get right into it. Jake, a couple of questions just for you. First one up, you led Anecdotes through SOC 2, ISO 27001, 27701, and 42001, the trifecta, as they say, all within your first 12 months as the Anecdotes CISO, which is super impressive. Can you tell us about the process?
Yeah, we're actually just beginning FedRAMP 20X Modera as well. So we're going a whole other level. We just don't seem to quit. But yeah, look, it's a team sport. It's a family game, right? I happen to be the name. When it goes wrong, it's on me. When it goes right, it's owed to everyone else. So I have members of my team, particularly two, a deal back to Mikhail Kipnis, who are next level in GRC, like writing playbooks that most people don't even understand, let alone know how to replicate. Unbelievable work. We take most things as an engineering problem when it comes to compliance in GRC. Mikhail's a background as an engineer. I come from a technical background. Adil is technical GRC. I think we look at things in a different way, which makes a lot of it a lot easier because we don't live in the BS of paperwork, processes, and procedures. We live in how can we actually automate and take this into a different angle, different direction, which makes everything a lot more fluid and easier to do. So the process is always the same, right? Work out firstly what you want to produce. I think people get caught up in the controls. This is what the 10,000 things ask me for. Whereas I think really you want to look and say, what do I actually want to show people? How do I demonstrate maturity? How can I build something which is consumable and which is real? And then you find how you fit that into the framework of that control set. And then stand it up in an automatable way in as much technology use as you can. And as much as we've got managed to only last 2 minutes, in the modern world, if you're not leveraging AI, then you're missing out.
And aligning those controls to be automated to actual real true operations, I think is really critical. We're kind of missing that piece where we take the entirety of the framework and the regulation and we try to force it into these departments. And a lot of the controls, they don't even apply to what you're actually doing. So yeah, great point. So absolutely automate wherever you can. So next question is, during your time as a CISO, what has been your biggest lesson learned?
I mean, there's lots, and I think we'll come on to the classic ones around understanding commercial, speaking business, etc. But the fundamental lesson that's most important as a CISO is hiring. There is nothing more important than the people you hire. You succeed and fail by the people you put in seats. We are obsessive around hiring in my org. I've got some of the very best in the business, and that's what helps us succeed. Then it's a case of lay the strategy out. As a CISO, I should know where I want us to be in 6 months or a year, but I should get the hell out of the way once I've said what that is. I think that's the real key, right? Not micromanaging, hiring the right people, giving them the right opportunities, letting them succeed or fail, and being there. And then the end result is when you succeed, I'm very clear and specific, because I wasn't the first sentence of this call, that the credit goes to those who did the work. When we fail, which hopefully is rarer, it's me. I got the strategy wrong, right? And I think that's the most important lesson I've learned is hire right and be willing to let people show you how much better than you they probably are.
Yeah, I love that answer, Jake. And I've heard, we've talked about this before, and I've seen you comment on going through the SOC 2 and these ISO processes, and you always give credit to your team. And I love that. I think it's just great from a leadership perspective. A lot of my background's in the military, and that's a very military thing, to pass the credit to your team and to keep the blame on your shoulders. So that's part of why I said you're one of our favorite CISOs, because we really respect you for that. So now we're going to get into a bunch of questions for both Jake and Karina. We're kind of going to bounce it back and forth. If somehow I have something useful to add, I will. Probably not going to happen. I never have anything good to say. No, I'm just kidding. But first one for Jake. So, Jake, some companies, when they're small, they're thinking, should we hire a CISO now? Oh, it kind of you have to pay them a lot. Maybe we should wait. Then maybe a company might let it hold off too long. So when should a company start thinking about bringing in a CISO?
Gosh, that's like a piece of string question. It depends what you do, right? If you're a tech company selling a product, particularly in the security vertical, you should have a CISO from day one, because it's basically like A, your greatest sales asset, and B, the person who can actually enable you to sell your product to your target audience. If you are a commercial retail company selling shoes, like, you probably don't need one until you start talking about PCI and online retail. You have physical assets and infrastructure to protect. It's a very different problem. So I think it really depends on, it's very hard to define. It depends on who you are. What I do think is that any company, from the point of really growing at all, should have security expertise. CISO is a title. I don't give a damn what you call me. You can call me the janitor. As long as you pay me what I ask for, I don't care what you call me. Like, I think that should be the same thing. Sometimes you have CISOs who are paid half of what other CISOs are paid, because really they're not actually doing the same role. And the CISO in like a vendor like myself, who wears multiple hats, I'm not doing the same role as like a CISO in the S&P is. Like, my challenges and my problems are very different to theirs. And the skill set I have, they don't have, and vice versa. So I think that the key is working out as a CEO, as an exec team, what are our problems? We're always going to need security expertise. What do I need? Do I need technical security expertise to secure a product? Do I need physical security expertise to secure buildings? Do I need compliance expertise because I need to get through PCI and HIPAA and various certificates that are really hard to get to? Or do I need like an all-in-one hat? Or do I just need to get a CISO now and let them stop building and just like accept the expense? I don't think there's an answer to that question I can give you that I wouldn't regret 10 seconds later. So I think it's very much about the business understanding what they need and defining what that role looks like.
So I think I want to add to that too. A lot of CISOs really grow up very, very technical, right? And what I'm seeing right now in a lot of clients and just discussions is they're honed in on the technical aspect, and they keep their technical kind of environment very, very secure. But what they don't want to do, and they've never had the right exposure to, is the GRC piece, the paper pushing piece, the collecting the evidence, the doing the process, the gathering, evidence for controls that maybe are a little outside of their environment, maybe the vendor management group or the legal group or the finance group, right? And so all of a sudden, what we're seeing right now is kind of this separation of the type of CISO that you are. So you may be a very technically astute, brilliant CISO, but you want to kind of hand off the GRC piece, and you don't want to be as involved in it. And we're seeing that kind of more and more. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why we kind of constructed compliance management as a service, because the CISOs that bring us in kind of hand it over to us and say, that part I don't really want to do about it. Now, in theory, it should be that one function, right? But we're just seeing more and more where the technical CISOs don't want to go down the compliance path.
I think, though, to add some and to disagree some, like, the title CISO is chief, right? That's the point. It's an executive role, whether it's a VP, a head of, whatever you call it, it's an executive role. An executive has to have multiple competencies. Like, it doesn't really matter. I'm not better than my AppSec guys at AppSec. I'm not better than my GRC guys at GRC. Like, I'm not better at engineering than the engineers. Like, I'm not better at IT than the IT guys. The reality is that, like, what I have is strategic competency to know where we need to be and the ability to think through how we get there. Then, more importantly, the ability to operate as an executive. Like, I think when we talk about CISOs, technical versus non-technical or commercial versus non-commercial, like, we're just getting a bit mixed up in general. I think we need to focus on actually having like the general executive competencies to own and direct and build a business function. The rest of it
and great point to that, and another one that's come up several times actually, and I'd love to kind of ask about this, what your thoughts are, is there are some CISOs who've actually reached out to me and said, what's with the business going and downloading all of these different AI tools and they're using it all over the place? Why am I accountable for this? Right. So my answer typically is you have to treat AI just like it's a vendor, right? Whatever your AI capability you bring in, you have to put the same vendor management controls around it. You have to give your people guidance on what they can and cannot put into that functionality or that tool, right? And so some CISOs are feeling like the adoption of AI is so outside of their control, but then they're being asked to put some wrappers around it from a security perspective. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's two problems with the CISO that spoke to you there, and it comes back to my executive point. Like, they're not operating as an executive. The first one is, why the hell are they surprised? Like, why do they not know what's going on? Like, either by technical, logical controls or just by being a good leader, they should know what's happening in the business. The second is, why are they saying, why is it mine? I'll take it. Like, I've said I'll have AI. Any chance, I'll take it. Like, back at Single Store, I took SREs in a heartbeat. I was like, give me the SRE too. If no one wants them, I'll have them, because those guys are super technical.
Yep,
and they can GRC engineer before GRC engineering was a thing.
Yep.
Like, it's the same in AI. AI is money. Like, every CIO or whatever has a budget for AI tools per year. Give me AI, I'll take it. It's the best way to secure it if I own it. It's the best way to get extra budget that I didn't know I didn't need. Like, it's the best way to take ownership of an executive level. Like, if anyone is saying AI didn't know, that scares the life out of me. They didn't know what was going on. And if they're saying I don't want it, I question whether they really know what they're doing as a leader.
Yep. Great points. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It seems like a fundamental disconnect if a CISO or the equivalent would say, like, why is it mine? You know, it's just a smarter tool, and you don't even need to recreate the wheel to manage it. Just figure out the parts that are new when AI comes on board and deal with that. Like, with AI, we might talk more about ethics than you would with, like, using Calendly or something like that. So just account for that. So great interaction with you two. To go along with this, there's a lot of companies that would like to do things a little differently than maybe a traditional S&P 500 CISO. So, Karina, let's hear from you first on this one, if you'd like. What are your thoughts on the other types of CISOs, like vCISO, vendor CISO, which a little differently, and also field CISOs? What do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I froze for a second.
What are your thoughts on the other types of CISOs, such as vCISO, a vendor CISO, and the field CISO role?
And I think this is one of the problems that we're kind of propagating. There's so many different types of CISOs that we're creating those silos, and we're kind of propagating this kind of where's the responsibility problem, right? And there's so many different functions that you can apply to some of the overarching responsibilities. I mean, I'd love to see what Jake has to say about that.
I think vCISOs or fractional CISOs, whatever we call them today, it's a commercial difference, right? There's no difference to hiring a normal CISO. They're predominantly multiple time CISOs that now hold several agreements to work with several smaller companies because that company can't afford them full time, but wants their knowledge now, right? So I think that's not really different. It's more of a case of just part-timingify and paying on a contractor basis versus a full-time, removing benefits. So I don't think the vCISO thing is as much of a thing for me. The field and vendor I combine, right? A field CISO is an evangelist. The problem that we have here is that a lot of field CISOs actually have no CISO or security background. And that I find fundamentally wrong. But when you go to a vendor CISO, they should be capable in all the attributes and qualities of a field CISO, which is this commercial side that says, yes, my primary role is to secure this business. But actually, let's go back a step. My primary role as an exec is to grow and progress this business. My primary function role is to secure this business. My next one is going back to the first one, right? How do I help develop and grow the business? Well, that's revenue. Like who's the best salesperson at a Ferrari garage? The guy that drives Ferraris, right? It's a logical step. F1 drivers can sell more cars than the random guy down the street can. It's the same way in our world. Like a vendor CISO should be capable of talking about product, why they use it, why they dog food it, like why it's good. So I think field and vendor should blend together. And the vCISO thing, I think, is just a commercial. It's just a cheap way of employing a CISO on a part-time basis.
Yeah, that's a great take. I try not to overcomplicate this sort of question. The way I look at it is you got full-time CISO, and you got like fractional CISO, part-time CISO for companies that maybe don't have as much going on or want to save some money. And then whether it's a vendor CISO or a field CISO, I think no matter what, you have to have proper experience. Do you have to be a CISO, a full-time CISO before? I mean, it helps, but not necessarily. Like there's some people that have held roles with a scope of like 30,000 users, so maybe they weren't called CISO, but it's kind of equivalent. And then the other part of this is how much sales and marketing are you going to do? You know, because if you're a traditional CISO, you may not do as much. So what do you think about that, Jake?
Yeah, I guess I can see different ways. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at like when a company hires, we go back to that start, right? You ask like, when do you hire a CISO? If you ask the same question about like, how do you hire a CISO? I think that's coming back to the same problem, right? It's like, what are you looking to solve? Like, have you just had a breach? You need someone who's an expert in like incident response, rebuilding, securing, like strengthening the perimeter. Like, are you a security product? At which point you need someone who's equally good on a stage, in front of people, on webinars, talking about the product, like sitting down with customers, has an extensive network, but equally was a CISO, understands the technology, can secure the business. It really depends. Like the vCISO, do you need someone full time or do you just need someone part time? Like you look at that as, like I said, a monetary thing. I can either pay a lower grade security expert, a manager, let's say 150 grand a year, right? Or is that 150 grand a year spent better by paying a very experienced CISO for 2 days a week? Don't know. You've got to work out as a business what you want.
Yeah.
And I think there's the same problem here, like for the field vendor, whatever, right? Do you need someone who's got sales skills and commercial skills, or just a technical background, or do you need like what do you need? Like that's always the problem with hiring anyone, actually understanding what the hell your JD is actually for.
Well, and a lot of people, unfortunately, sitting in the board, they just say, we want it fixed. And we heard that the CISO is the guy to do it. And they bring on a CISO. And because their requirements haven't been very well tailored to what their expectations are, there's just a bunch of kind of assumptions that happen a lot of times, and finger pointing that may happen a lot of times. So that's really, really important to detail out exactly what your expectations are.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, Karina, from what you've seen, what do companies get wrong during the process of hiring a CISO?
Well, I think exactly what Jake was talking about, right? I mean, the fact that that set of expectations hasn't been very well defined, and they expect that somebody coming in the door with a lot of their experience can kind of mind melt and understand the expectations that the board is expecting of the CISO. And so to have that set of expectations clearly defined. The other thing that really supports a lot of this is, again, I'm going to go back to published documents. That should be a very well-defined role that has a very specific set of job functions and responsibilities, not ethereal, nebulous words, right? But actual real expectations. What does the roadmap look like? 30, 60, 90, right? That's always really useful. And then you move into the 6 months, 1 year kind of expectation. So, we're seeing more and more with the job market the way that it is, friends being hired and people you can recognize being hired, and not necessarily for skills or even the expectations, because they think they're going to bring somebody in and that person's going to do it for them. And they believe in the philosophy of you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, like myself. I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. But with that also comes the burden of bringing somebody on and expecting that they can know exactly what your expectations are of them. So those need to be very careful discussions.
Yeah, Jake, what have you seen companies get wrong when they're trying to hire a CISO?
I'd say what I said before, not knowing what they want. If you don't know what your JD is, it's very hard to hire. I think too many times they think they know what they want, but they don't. We see it a lot in vendors where they'll go and bring like a big name CISO from like a big S&P or like global enterprise, which is great, but those guys haven't been hands-on for like a decade. They've been managing a team of a couple hundred people. They don't actually understand modern technology. They certainly can't get in front of people and speak about their product. They're just really like a name brand. I think that's one of the ones I see quite often is, tech companies hiring for the wrong thing.
Yeah, great point. So Jake, you've seen a lot of CISOs. Just from your personal experience, what have you seen a good CISO do that bad CISOs do? Don't do, rather.
I think good CISOs embrace risk. I think there is this notion in our industry that we're there to protect against risk and we should be the risk-averse people like the world of no. And I think good CISOs are able to adapt, be agile, and embrace risk with an aggression that matches almost anyone in the business. Like whether that's from AI or whether that was back from cloud in the day or whether that's about analytics, like whatever the next wave will be, agentic, which we're currently living in, like they're the ones that we're going to say, well, actually, firstly, how can I apply it to my particular business function? And then how can I see its benefit in the business? And those are the questions they ask before they start to consider security. And that's a real mindset of an executive is what can it do for this business? And then I put my security lens on. So I think good CISOs have that in their kind of cap. The other one really is they're technical. Like there is very different degrees of technical. I don't believe that nobody is non-technical. I hate the term when someone says I'm a non-technical CISO. But I think that they have at least an understanding of technology. Like you don't have to be able to sit on the command line and be able to code, but you have to understand how things work. If you can't vibe code, then you've got a problem because that just relies on your understanding how components are configured together.
Yeah, that's a great point. Karina, what do you think? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thanks. My thought is it needs to align to the business, right? Some CISOs can have can be involved with vendors, can be involved very heavily with the financial aspects of running the business, with establishing the strategy, with, making sure that roadmap goals are really attained to. Some CISOs really do want to roll up their sleeves and be the commander on the phone at 2:30 in the morning, right? And look for problems and be very close to the queue for, the incident handling and the change management, the daily operations. So once again, like with any control and regulatory framework, it has to apply to your actual operations. So I don't know that any of those things are bad or good, because if the business needs that CISO in that location for that function, and that's what's working for them and that's what their expectations on, then I think that that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. And going back to what Jake said about the embracing risk, I'll correlate this with investing for a second, right? Like if you're just a typical worker with not much experience, you should probably maybe stay away from individual stocks. Whereas the top investors, they embrace that variance, which variance is risk, right? Because risk is just the probability of something going wrong. And when you're embracing risk, that's more likely. So a top CISO will be able to help the company navigate that better than others.
So I want to actually add a little bit to risk management. I'm seeing a lot, like with frameworks that are out there, they have very ethereal, high-level guidance that really is not very quantitative, right, for your actual operations. And those ethereally written controls on your 12,000 row spreadsheet, most of the time they're not going to all apply to you because they talk about random things that really have nothing to do with your actual operations. We actually see this in regulations as well sometimes. So a lot of the risk management frameworks that we try to adopt true risk is, I have a failed control. How badly do I care about it, or do I not care at all about it? And based on that decision, I'm going to go mitigate it, or I'm going to accept the risk, or I'm going to transfer it to somebody else, right? Your classic risk management kind of competencies there. So risk management, although from an ethereal, strategic, high level area is great, but I think it needs to be met with actual real failed controls so that the person managing that risk is able to provide the posture of the governance at a whole and have a dashboard on which controls have failed, so you can choose to pivot to address them or not. But unless you know that the controls have failed, you can't make that decision. And unless the controls are aligned to your actual operations, you don't know what they are, right? Because you've taken this monster spreadsheet and just tried to force it into your environment without making it appropriate to your actual operations.
I'd go deeper than that even. So I think there's two fundamental issues in risk for me. One is that it's super like finger in the air. like both in like the risks we choose,
Exactly.
the quantitative value we put on them, the qualitative nature of being mitigated. I think risks have to live in data. Like if I can't show you the physical data of a failing control, then I can't really show you the risk.
Right.
Like, and also that data should also give you a relevance to, firstly, the level of exposure and the potential, therefore, the actual volatility of the risk, and also the level of maturity or effectiveness of mitigating control. If there's mitigating control in place, can I show you in data it's effective? Like saying that all my engineers spin up 00 security group instances in AWS, right? That's a risk. What's my control? Can I show that I have a functioning thing, which means it's unable for them to do that? They physically can't do it, right? Or they can only do it with complex usernames and passwords, therefore it makes it very hard to crack them anyway, right? I think that's where we have to live. And also the other thing is that risks become these ginormous lists, like Christmas lists of like various crap that you just live there for years. Like I always look at a risk and say, if I don't have an icon of an application, a picture of a person, or like a logo of a consultant to that risk, but if they're there, then I'm mitigating that risk and I have to assess for efficacy through data. If I have nothing, then I need to go submit to the budget and say, I need to get something to fix this risk. If I have logos and people and consultants who don't align to any risks, the hell am I paying them for? Like I should be dropping those tools because they're doing nothing for me. They're not protecting anything I've got. This assumption that we as CISOs buy tools to mitigate risk is completely flawed because half the time we just buy tools because it's the industry trend, right? Like we're buying tools to protect against AI threat. What AI threat are we buying to protect against? How do we know it's a risk that we've got? Like, how can I show the data that I need to protect against this? And how can I credibly take that to my CEO or CFO and say, I need 50, 100, 250 grand to fix this risk when I can't prove that I even have the bloody risk to begin with?
Well, and I mean, this is where risk is the juicy middle part of the sandwich between governance and compliance, right? GRC is governance, risk, and compliance. And so that heartbeat of knowing when your controls have failed require that your controls are actually appropriate. And then that is the original principled dashboard, right? We all love to use the word dashboard. Well, I've got everything, all my gauges and all my everything. Super. But are you managing risk that's actually lined up to your actual operations? And that's the way that you can make those governance decisions and know whether or not you're in compliance. So absolutely. Good stuff.
Wow. There was a lot of value there. That really, both your responses were really good. Like Jake said, you know, if you can't show the quantitative side, something might be wrong. And you can't just say, oh, we have compensating controls. Okay, well, let's go look at the compensating controls. Show me there then, you know, because one way or another, there has to be some something you can quantify. And if there's not, you probably are wasting your time. The control probably doesn't apply. There's no impact. Why are you wasting your time?
Yeah.
So this next question, Jake, so Karina and I, we do these every month, and we talk a lot about different breaches, different companies, some CISOs. So we're going to focus on you for this question, since you know a lot of good CISOs. So who's the one CISO that stands out to you the most and why? And if you want to be quick and name 2 or 3 or 4, you know, it's all good. What do you think?
I said before we started this call, this is like asking someone who's your favorite friend in front of the whole school. Look, I think anyone who holds the same chair as I do is brave and credible, because it's a horrible role to have in the modern world. But I'll pick 3 for different reasons. Asaf Kieran, who's the CISO at Qualtrics, who just wrote a book on authentic leadership and security, is a deeply technical, super experienced CISO who's been through multiple roles, PayPal, Qualtrics, big, challenging, complex ones, and leads from the front and from the middle with kind of strategy and credibility. And he's just a genuinely lovely human being. I think Andrew Smeaton, who is just left as a CISO of Jamf not long ago, as the people leader. I mean, he'll tell you some stories. He literally drove into the Ukraine to get his people out and did some crazy things while he was working in the Middle East as well, which are stories that should definitely be told at some point on a podcast, but maybe not without the right approvals and NDAs in place. True leader of people, right? Person who cares deeply about the people in front of them. And then I'd probably pick, I've been a big guy, I've always talked about community over competition. So one of my favorites, he's a good friend of mine, Matt Hillary, the CISO at Drata, who are, like I said, a semi-competitor of Anecdotes, but one of those people who strikes that blend we talked about before of being technically super competent, being very good on a stage, being very authentic, being very real, being commercially very capable, and just seeing things before they happen. I'll give you one more, actually. One more, then I'm done. Last one I'll give you for the last kind of attribute I think is valuable. A guy called Mario Platt. He's based in the UK, Portuguese guy, CISO at LastPass, who stepped into LastPass after their breach, right? Anyone who steps in and takes on a pretty big public breach remediation project, that's brave, right? That's ballsy. And I think that's a credible skill in itself. I mean, I can keep going, but those 4 to start with are some of the real attributes I think that people have to personify to take this role.
Fantastic call out. Thank you so much for all of those. We're probably going to be writing them to see if they want to come join.
There'll be some great stories in some of those.
That would be fantastic to hear. I'd love to hear it. I'm going to go ahead and pass on answering this question, Mike.
Those are really good choices, and I don't know them personally, but just the fact that they're at companies like PayPal and LastPass, I know they have experience because those companies get tested all the time. I've heard all the examples of the fraud that PayPal was going through, and I'm sure the CISO dealt up with a lot of that, but even the co-founders were in that case because it was so new at the time, and it just the scammers were coming out of the woodworks.
Yeah.
And LastPass, you know, if a hacker can get access to your LastPass, that's like the keys to the kingdom there. So I know they're legit as well. And of course, Drata, you know, massive GRC platform. I'm sure they would have similar expertise as you, but I also like the real world stories of leadership because that's not really necessarily business or technical. That's more just leadership, helping your people, you know, because when it comes down to it, we talk a lot about technology, but people really are what matter.
100%.
All right. So the next question here. So Jake, a CISO is starting a new role. There's a lot to do, a lot to learn. What should their first 90 days look like, in your opinion?
Work out what good looks like. Number 1, talk to your CEO, talk to whoever you report to, and work out what is success in your job. If you don't know what you're being measured by, you're really in a problem to start with. Then once you know what you're being measured by, work out how far you are from it, right? So if that's get these standards, these certifications, fine. If that's add security at this level, fine. If that's scale a team, fine. But work out what you're going to be paid on and work out how far you are from getting paid on it. Then build a plan that gets you from A to B. Once you've got that plan, assess if you've got the people to implement that plan. Those are the steps for me that you have to work out before you do anything. And I think I've made that sound quite simple, but that's from multiple startup and scale up roles. I think it's a skill set that very few CISOs have. They generally get in and run around like their heads on fire with everything that's going on and try and work out what they need to do with everything there without sitting back and going, maybe I'm here because the last person didn't know what was actually happening. And maybe I'm here to reset and start again. So one of the comments just put review the environment. That's a fundamental part for me as well. Understand your tech stack. Understand your gaps. It's the same part as like scoping your people to meet along with the implementation requirements of your plan. Like, do you have the right people for the tech stack you've got? We're heavy GCP users. I need guys who understand GCP. If you're an expert in AWS security, you're useless to me. Right? It's that kind of nuance which you have to have. And it's the point of, like, I think Karina mentioned earlier, hiring people that you know rather than hiring people that come with the right skill set. This is a classic one. People often bring their teams with them, and I've done it as well. But you've got to make sure that their skills match the new challenge, because this company might not be the same as the last one, and the people you need might not be the same.
Yeah, that's a big one. The quote, "What got you here won't get you there," quickly comes to mind in that regard. That's a great take, because you might see like CISO or maybe the equivalent say, "Oh, well, you know, I'm going to start this role, and the company will tell me what's important." Or you might see them say, "Oh, I've got this great plan laid out," and it's like, "Well, did you talk to the CEO and the other stakeholders in the company to see what they think?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's probably a good idea." So if you do a little of both, should be good to go. Karina, do you have anything to add?
So you kind of touched on where I always like to focus is the rest of the company and figuring out the jigsaw of how you fit in with them, right? The competencies for the legal department, like I'm seeing a lot of contractual disconnects between the technology person, the CTO, or passing over the contract to legal, and legal accepting and thinking that the technical questions are already addressed and have been answered and redlined, and an agreement has already happened, and then they look for mostly the technical kind of, when is a contract expiring, right? What are some of the termination clauses, right? These kinds of things. So to understand what some of the other departments are doing is really, really important. And I think that really needs to happen in that first 30 days, is figure out your landscape, right? Talk to every other single department head and make sure that you know how to align yourself with not only their charters, to your boss's charters, right? And then that will really help formulate what your roadmap is going to be, which is going to include that gap assessment, right? Which is going to include understanding the leadership targets. Are you scaling up? Are you scaling down, right? Are you like, what? Take a look at the inventory. What's the health of how accurate the housekeeping has been so far from the technology perspective and the GRC perspective, right? So these are all things that can lead to a pretty powerful roadmap at the end of that 90-day cycle.
I think adding to Karina's comments, she talked about kind of like aligning yourself to other people's goals and requirements. Like, I've been pretty public about the fact I don't believe in transactional relationships. I don't believe that you buy favors, but I do believe that a CISO is the only person, and every time I've sat in an exec table, I'm the only person who can help everybody reach their goals.
Right.
I'm the only person who can enable sales, who can improve marketing, who can help in product, who understands direction. I'm the only one who knows like all of these domains. So, I mean, that's the one, right? If you're looking at how can you influence and impact a business, go and help people, because you need to understand what they're being paid on to know how you can help them get to where they are. Because again, like I said, if you're sitting in an exec chair, your job is to progress the business. So the more people you can help reach their goals, the more the business is progressing. It's not your domain that matters most here. Like, it's the one that drives the business furthest, fastest.
Right.
I would argue the CISO role might be the one that's the most misunderstood as
100%.
well. And like, if many times when I'm about to talk to a company or going to start working with a company, I'll go to their website, and a lot of times you'll see like 5, maybe 8 different CXO roles. You'll see like even some niche ones, and you're like, oh wow, they're a software company, they don't have a CISO. That's kind of interesting, you know. So, all right, well, we just talked about the first 90 days, and I gave a quote. So I have another quote. As Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So say we have a plan, we run with it the first year. Maybe it went well, maybe it didn't. So let's start with Jake. What adjustments should a CISO be thinking about after their first full year in the role?
I think the first year is always a dangerous time to make assessments. In one of the comments, Thomas commented on something I said at the beginning, which said that I said GRC is an engineering problem. And I say this a lot. And I think that's kind of my ethos to everything as a leader too. Like, and it's an engineering issue. You don't wait until something's been pushed into prod and fails before you fix it. Like, you look at something in iterative stages. You test things, you run like user tests, like you see things in this. And I think your own security strategy is the same. Like, if you're waiting till year 1 to work out if it worked or failed, like, I'd fire me. Like, if it's taking me that long to work out if I'm succeeding or failing, like, you should know. And I've been lucky/unlucky enough to spend most of my career in scale ups where, look, iteration is just a part of life. Like, we live on the fact that what our strategy is might change from month to month. That's how we make money. So I think, but that's a skill set that's born in the scale-ups and startups, particularly in the Israeli ecosystem in Tel Aviv. But I think it's something that you have to transfer and translate to every CISO. Like, you should constantly be looking and saying, does this work? Could this be done better? Does that work? Could that be automated? Like, it's this engineering problem mindset. If you look at something and say, it isn't working, can I fix it? If I can't fix it, do I even need it? If I don't need it, get the hell out of there. Like, we need to look at things in a more technical, almost binary type approach to be able to just be willing to say, it failed. You know what? That's fine. I'm going to fail 10 times for every 1 time I succeed. If I'm really good, it's 10 to 1. Like, that's the reality. And I think that, yeah, so after the first year, so I'd almost celebrate how many times you failed along the way, because that means you learned.
So what this reminds me of is there was a long time ago, and this isn't to like put anybody down, but there's these pictures of different overshot of a bed and a person laying in the bed, and one of the people is on its side and one of the people's on its back, one of the people's on its stomach sleeping, right? And so you're seeing figures sleeping at night, and the header of one says CFO, the header of one says CEO, the header of a different one has some other CX title, and the bed for the CISO is just empty because the CISO's not sleeping. So I think two things that I want to add to this. The first one is fail quickly and pivot quickly, right? Meaning that GRC measurement, that dashboard that aligns to your true operations should tell you early on, well before that year, whether or not you're heading in the right direction or not. And you should be able to have the metrics to prove it. Metrics don't necessarily have to come out of a particular tool. It's great if they do, if the tool is all encompassing and you don't have tool lard really clouding the overall posture of the governance and the health of the operations. That's the first thing. The second thing is be ready for the failures, right? So, lived through the wildfires here in LA, pandemonium, because that document that you thought was sitting somewhere with the DR plan probably isn't there, probably hasn't been updated in 5 years. And when you use words like frequently, and the guy sitting there trying to do a backup and worried about his house going on fire, whether or not his kids made it and his wife's okay, what does frequently mean? Is that every 5 minutes? Is that next week? What the hell is a frequently? Right? And so here come the phone calls. What I can follow directions, but I don't know what this says. And so this is where those very specific controls come into play, because when you live in this ethereal world, what ends up happening is that emergency happens and it happens. And I hate to say it, just be prepared for it, because if you drill your people actively and they know that that document says run this command every 5 minutes, or here's where the hard paper is for your instructions if you're off site, or to the HR person during the wildfires, HR was afraid to call anybody because they're like, well, maybe this person's house is on fire. And the person isn't calling into the office to say, I'm alive or I'm not alive or my house burned down, right? So those just basic human instructions, let alone systemic instructions for redundancy, it's not for the auditor. You're not writing this stuff for the auditor. You're writing this for your people to be successful in any single scenario that is thrown at them. People used to write these DR policies for, okay, well, the auditor's coming, well, we got to update everything because they're going to be here on Tuesday of next week. That's not who you're writing this for. You're writing this for your people to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great example, Karina. Those fires, since they were so widespread across California, I'm sure there was at least one, probably 5, 10, 20 CISOs or the equivalent that thought they had a great plan in place. Maybe they've had a sparkling record, but when something of that scale happens, you may not be as prepared as you thought you were, and that's going to happen sometimes, and there's just nothing you can really do about it.
You're never prepared. Like, I've been in several breaches now in my time. You can have the best workshops, the best processes, the best tabletops in the world. You find out what someone is like under pressure and what they're like as a CISO when the phone calls at 3 a.m. and the CEO is pissing himself because he doesn't know what to do next. Like, that's when you find out who you are as a leader, because you either have the gravitas to say, yes, you're my boss, but get out of the room, I've got this. And then you've actually got this. Like, to stay calm, to work through, to go through it, to handle the communications. Like, we as CISOs are not there to avoid breaches. We are there to assume breach and be capable of restoration. Like, we are effectively risk professionals or risk recovery professionals, as Joe Sullivan, the ex-CISO of Uber, refers to us these days. Like, you're not there to stop the breach. You're there to know how to deal with it when it happens, because the world's gone from when I had my own DC and I protected the perimeter and I could build DMZs and no one could get in. Like, that world is gone. It's gone a long time ago. Like, if someone wants to hack you right now, they're going to hack you. And I think so Corey Nordgast asked a question in this thing about like how to move from traditional large company CISO to being a smaller company one. That for me is the answer, Corey. It's be willing to get your hands dirty and be willing to have nowhere to hide. In big companies, CISOs have places to hide. At my kind of companies, they don't. Like, when it goes wrong, when the shit hits the fan, it's on you.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So earlier we talked about AI and the CISO's role in AI, and all three of us agree they should be involved, but we haven't talked specifics yet. So let's get a little more granular on this one. Karina, if you want to answer this first or pass it off. So a company is looking to do more with AI. What role should the CISO play in this? And let's try to be a little specific. Like, say, maybe a company's adding AI agents instead of their customer service agents, for example. Like, what do you think?
So I can basically kind of regurgitate some of the guidance that we provide our clients. The first thing is data classification. If you don't know where your most important data is, then trying to apply AI against non-structured data without the data maps is going to become very difficult, because you need to have that really well-defined workflow for the repetition and the automation. The second thing that we have frequent conversations about is executives get really frustrated that people just go in and just go into AI and ask it all kinds of questions. And my only question is, did you provide them the guidance that tells them what they can and what they cannot do when it comes to AI? So there's some technical, you can blacklist, you can do, right, you can do some restrictive things there. But at the end of the day, especially with BYOD devices, I mean, for God's sakes, there's only so much that you can do to control. So what are we left with at that point? At that point, we're left with education and awareness, right? That constant message that says, look, do not put my client information. I mean, we use AI at Clever Compliance. Every document we put in redacted for that client. We're under an NDA. Because what I know is that data set for that AI tool is sitting in some data center somewhere. I don't know the access controls. I don't know the backup controls. I don't know who's reading this stuff, right? I don't know any of that. So very classic case, Otter AI back in the day, situation between the executive and the salesperson, constant phone calls. Well, not constant, every so often, right? Just keeping an update on each other. The Otter AI was brought into the meeting, took notes. Discussion topics were very, very sensitive many times. The reorgs and the financial posture and who's the bitch in the office and, how many headcount do you have open? I mean, like all kinds of very, very specific company information. Well, no one ever asked where that data was getting stored. That data got hacked. And now all of a sudden, that company's deepest, darkest secrets are out in the black web. Executive gets pulled into the CEO's office. Why are you talking about us? We're like, what are you talking about? I'm not saying anything to anybody. So whose liability is it? And that's what that lawsuit was about, right? So because the assumption was by the company that brought in or allowed the AI tool was that everybody does all the right things all the time. And in reality, that data storage usually sits in the cheapest place in the furthest away corner of the world, as long as it's cheaper. And you don't know what kind of controls are in place protecting that data of yours. So I'll hand it over to Jake. Those are my quick opinions.
I think there are three things. I'm rewatching The Wire at the moment, which I think is one of the best TV series ever made. And in series 3, there's a bit where they start a co-op between the various drug gangs and they're buying their drugs combined for business reasons, right? And they're sitting in what looks like a really professional business meeting in a hotel, and some guy's taking notes because he's been told in his business class he's supposed to take notes. And Stringer Bell, the guy who runs the main gang's like, what the hell are you doing? You're taking notes on a criminal corruption circle. Like, grabs the notes and throws them in the bin, right? And I think that's where Karina's getting. Number one is have some very limited but very strict guidelines about what you can't do, right? If they get too long, they're pointless. But here's like 10 things you cannot put in AI, right? That's enough. Stop the criminal corruption becoming public, which is basically what you're getting to. Number 2 is like this concept around safety. So we tell our kids, like, don't run with scissors, don't touch the hot plate. But most accidents happen on a trampoline, and we don't tell our kids don't go on the trampoline. Right? We tell them the things which are the most dangerous. So I think in the same way, teach them the things which are really going to cause harm and say, don't do those, right? So don't tell them not to put the worst possible data in. Tell them like not to connect it to like a live production GitHub environment, for example, right? Unless it's been pre-authorized and worked through and tested. Then number 2 and the next 2. The next one I'd say is do it yourself. Like CISOs are technologists. We have to understand technology. If your extensive use as a CISO or security leader is I go on ChatGPT or Claude and I ask it questions like it's Google, you have no right to have a voice on AI, right? If you can't be coding, vibe coding in Lovable or Replit, if you can't use like a brain like Notion, if you're not connecting like various things and building actual APIs in between, if you're not building your own like nervous system of AI in your own world, in your own lab, you can't tell other people what they should or shouldn't do because you don't understand the technology yourself. So get into it and use it. This is the easiest technology ever for accessibility to someone who is quote unquote non-technical. My last point is chill the hell out, right? Like AI is here. Pandora came out of the box a long time ago. Like it's too late. Like if you want to try and stop AI and try and say you're going to shut the door. When I heard CISO say we're blocking all AI apps in the business like about a year ago, I just laughed at them all. Well, yeah, good effing luck. Like I tell you right now, what's going to happen? They're all going to use it personally. All your company material just got taken out of your Google Workspace environment and put into their personal ones. Yeah. Like that's the realities. You have to like embrace change, accept risk, encourage it. Be the one who says, you know what? Let's try these new tools. Then you're in the room to have the conversation to say that one's probably a no, but this one, that was good. Like you've got to be there and be willing to be chill and be embracing and be risk accepting and be the one who takes the kind of person by the scruff of the neck and drags them forward, right? That's our role. Our role is not to pull people back, it's to pull them forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we've established the CISO should be involved, but I think the CISO or the equivalent should be making sure the other relevant roles are involved too. Like if a company's big enough to have like a chief privacy officer, maybe they should be involved. But this also applies at smaller companies. Like just
let me step right. I'm going to piss off a lot of people, but once it comes to AI, if you get legal involved and you're a CISO, on your head be it. Because they will bring in such levels of regulation and rigor that you may have just tied your own hands in knots and given your team a hell of a load of work that you never wanted or needed to actually do. I'd be very careful. Like there is a separation of church and state between technical security and legal. We often get blurred too quickly. We need to separate and say AI right now is a security problem unless you are an end consumer facing product when it becomes a privacy problem. Like otherwise it should stay here. Like this is one of the few times, actually I say it a lot, but definitely one of the times I'd advise, like do not get legal counsel involved unless there is a rationale and reason to do so, because I can guarantee they will be considerably more risk averse than you. And that is going to hamper any ability to accept and adopt change.
Yeah, you definitely got to account for that too, and maybe kind of manage the process. But the example I was going to give in regards to privacy, like numerous times now in the past month, I've met with companies, some bigger, some smaller. I think some of them are even like one-person companies. And what's the first thing that happens? Their AI recorder, note taker comes into the meeting.
Or several of them usually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like privacy needs to be addressed because it's not only cybersecurity or privacy issue, it's a business issue. Like we're having a call, we're talking about working together. When I connected to the call, I'm like, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to be helpful. But what if I really don't like you having your note taker on? Then I have to say, hey, Jake, can you turn that off? Like, I don't want that on. And before you know it, it's like, you got to account for that. So we have to at least think through the smaller issues like that. And maybe tell everyone that at the start of a meeting, if you're going to use a note taker, get their consent. Try to put a consent banner up or something like that.
The thing that I see with these note takers is I have not seen one project plan or one set of deliverables or one set of agile or scrum, run-in tickets that have anything to do or that are a derivative of an AI note taker from a meeting.
Oh, like we do. We set them in like team meetings, go through stuff, and then we actually draw plans off of the stuff we discussed. It means no one's actually taking physical notes. So but I agree that most people don't, but I think we should be going to the point of actually using them.
Right. I mean, if you're going to turn it on, use it. Like, okay, I'll tell you, here's what you should do next week. And then there's a dependency for this. And in parallel, you should be working on this other thing. I have not once seen any of these notes be used for anything tangible inside a company.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, so we're down to our last question, and we wanted to invite Jake because he's one of the most forward-looking CISOs we know, already experimenting with MCP servers, different type of agentic AI. So Jake, what do you think the CISO role will look like in 2030?
2030?
or just in the next few years?
I'm brave enough to say I have no bloody clue. You know what? Like, if you'd asked me this 4 years ago, I mean, that was before I even started playing with OpenAI's early version of GPT. So no idea. Look, we're heading quickly towards a route in which we are orchestrators, where our people become an orchestration layer for technologies, and it's about automation. So I think we're heading to a way where we have a different org structure and we're able to accomplish things in a different way. I think we're heading to a way where security, to Karina's point earlier, is deeply much more technical again, because to enable you to automate and to leverage AI capabilities, you have to understand what the hell the actual workflows look like that do things and the components that go together to make A happen over here and B as an outcome over there. But in 4 years, like where this will be, honestly, anything I said right now would be embarrassing in 12 months' time.
Oh, well, Jake, I think, to be fair, I think you do know a lot about this because you're already doing a lot of the things like MCP servers, agentic AI. That's only going to be bigger then, because a lot of people haven't even been looking at that yet. And you know more about that stuff than most people already.
Yeah, but that could be replaced in 12 months' time. That's the problem. Like, I mean, it's the same, right? Just look in the GRC world that we're sitting and talking about most of the time. Last year, the buzzword of the year was GRC engineering. GRC became an engineering problem. I mentioned Mario Platt from LastPass earlier. We had a conversation on LinkedIn where we laughed about the fact that both of us ran SRE teams 5 years ago and saw GRC as an engineering problem. We used SREs to solve those problems technically. At the time, it wasn't a thing. In no point when I was sat then did I ever think other people would say GRC engineering. Where in January, GRC engineering is old and we're talking about agentic GRC. Like agentic GRC is just the automation of workflows. Talk's been doing it as a technology for years. But now we're just finding a new way to do it through Agent Kit and other available products in a simpler way. Like the reality is like, what's the next wave going to be? Who knows? Like we're getting to a point where the one thing I would say that for a CISO that I categorically stand by is GRC has always been the bastard little brother that no one wants to talk about. It's that compliance piece that nobody likes. Like unequivocally will state that GRC is going to become the window into all security for a CISO in the next 12 to 18 months. Like now you look at connected worlds, like our product Anecdotes or Vantadrad or whatever else is out there, like the way that they're now connected to your entire app stack, the way that you've now stood an MCP or people are launching their own AI capabilities in the product to query that data, to build agentic workflows in that data to say, I want to understand what our password management policy looks like in terms of our peer group. And then when it says it's terrible, to say, can you please go build me a better one? Deploy it and build it into my Okta application, rewrite my policy, put that in and send all the employees notification to redo it and press click and active. And by the way, can you redo that every 60 days? Like that's the future. GRC is now the window to security. That bit I stand by. Anything else scares the crap out of me about saying today.
So I got introduced into GRC in 2002. I'm sorry, 2001, 2002. So I've been doing this a bit over 25 years now. So really great. Those GRC principles hold true regardless of the tools. Some tools can make it go faster. Some tools can make it more confusing than it needs to be. Some tools help organize better. And depending on your audience, some tools can help with getting ready for the auditor or doing internal tracking or whatever is the use case, right? So I believe I am the biggest fan of GRC in the world. And I think that GRC will still, the principles will carry us through and will only become more significant and more relied upon to run a great company. Because whether you're retail, whether you're aerospace, whether you're pharmaceutical or healthcare or a fintech company, whatever you're doing, the controls need to be appropriate to your actual operations. And the closer you get to refining them, and yes, add the automation, but the closer you actually get to optimizing that continuity, the better you're going to be, because you're just going to be more efficient. You're going to see it faster. You're going to mitigate risk faster. It's just going to be amazing.
Wow. Great answers by both of you. And Jake, this is just one more reason why I like you. You're so humble. You say you don't really know what's going to happen. And then you say something that's so spot on. I would bet on it today. And I live in Las Vegas. I could probably go find a place to do that.
Okay. So let's close it up. Let's close it up.
Yeah. So Jake, thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Do you have any closing remarks, and where can the audience find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm super active. Follow me, interact with me, argue with me. I like to say things for the sake of people disagreeing. But no, I truly appreciate Mike, Karina. I love being here. I'll happily come again or bring people with me. Thank you for having me. So I've got to unfortunately drop to go and do actual work again. But this was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks
Awesome.
for joining us, Jake. Really, really appreciate you on. I also wanted to invite everybody, if you're an ISC2 member, we are having the GRC Summit right now, and I am closing keynote tomorrow. So please join us if you can. Have a great audience and a great presentation. I'm at Karina at clevercompliance.com. Also on LinkedIn, follow the company Clever Compliance.
Yeah. Outstanding. Always a pleasure to collaborate with you, Karina. And Jake, you talked about a different event. We should do that soon. To the audience, if you'd like to connect with me, please feel free to do that anytime. Like I mentioned earlier, if you could check out the GRC Room on YouTube and subscribe. If I have to pay you, I guess I'll pay you. No, I'm just kidding. Not going to pay you.
We're not sponsored. We don't take money from anybody. We're not sponsored. We volunteer our time. This is all for like a PSA for the community. So
yeah. Yep. No, exactly. But we know you have a lot of other stuff going on. So thanks for taking the time to join us, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.